James, and it's so great to be here. And thanks for everybody for showing up. I think that talking about stigma is something that someone's going to have to cut me off. I'm pretty sure there'll be James waving his hand saying enough because I could talk about this for hours on end. It's a good thing that it's midnight here in Australia and I'm going to need to sleep at some point. But in March next year, on the 28th and 29th of March in Jaipur in India, the first Global Diabetes Summit will be held. Sorry, Diabetes Stigma Summit will be held. And we're really very excited about this because it's building on a lot of work that's already happened. So, some of you may know that there was a consensus statement to end diabetes stigma that was launched almost 2 years ago now on World Diabetes Day. And that was written by a group of people from around the globe. There were 51 authors. A third of them had lived experience of diabetes, and all types of diabetes as well. And there was also a pledge to end diabetes stigma that I'm hoping everybody has signed, but I'm going to share lots of links in the chat a little later on. If you haven't signed that pledge yet, please do. Over 3,000 individuals have signed that. I think it's about 400 organizations and companies have as well. But the summit next year is to bring people together, and it is for everybody. It's for people with diabetes, people living with diabetes who have experienced stigma, who haven't experienced stigma. I want to talk to you because I don't think there are that many of us out there who haven't, in some ways, seen or been exposed to diabetes related stigma. It's for community organizations, for healthcare professionals, researchers, clinicians, educators, for industry. We'd love there to be people from the media because the way that diabetes is reported in the media is horrendously stigmatizing, and also for parliamentarians. So we're trying to bring everybody to the table and look at what the opportunities for collaborations, to highlight how to make policy and make systemic changes that can really address this issue, to share the latest global insights and research that's going on, as well as look at strategies and success stories as well, because there certainly have been some success stories. So I think that, one of the ways that I've always thought about this is I really think that diabetes as a whole has an image problem. And, James, what you were saying just earlier, I think really speaks to that. But we have an image problem in our own community as well about stigma. There's a lot of internalized stigma that we probably experience ourselves, but there is also a lot of stigma within the communities between the different types of diabetes, and that really fragments us, I believe. Any type of diabetes stigma harms everybody with diabetes. So where we have those sorts of conversations around, type 1 is this, type 2 is that, obviously it's important that we know what type of diabetes we have and we understand what that means. But when your response, or if your response is ever, yeah, but you don't mean my type of diabetes. You don't mean type 1. When you're talking about that, it's the lifestyle stuff. That is such a stigmatizing comment. So, thinking about how we as a community contribute to that stigma is really, really important as well. And part of that is actually going to be what is discussed at the summit next year. So, that's probably a good overview of it. I will share, as I said, all the details and the links for how people can get involved. I will just say there will be scholarships available for people with lived experience. And that's all going to become a little bit clearer sort of in coming weeks, actually. But you'll sort of be able to get a little overview of that if you have a look at the website. But we really are trying to get people, with lived experience driving this, because that absolutely who needs to be behind who needs to be behind all of this.
Okay, so there's some rousing comments on that. We do have some time if there's questions, but just for the sake of moderation, if you have a question, just put it into the chat. And while that's going on, I encourage everyone to check out the work that Renza and colleagues are doing on this. And I think a lot of us, well, I won't say a lot of us because some people are quite innocent on this, but I was certainly when I was diagnosed, my reflection was always to say like, okay, but I'm the innocent one, right? Like I'm the person with type 1 and I didn't deserve it and all that. Unlike those other. And I think a lot of us fall into that trap who have type 1 and that's for me a rhetorical trap because one, no one deserves to get any diabetes or any other thing. But then two, if you look at other conditions that have kind of went from a position of being heavily discriminated against to actually getting results. So by that I mean HIV. So I think about HIV in the 80s and 90s, right? It was all about, oh, well, I wasn't an IV drug user. I was just, and or I wasn't a gay person. And that is a trap. That is a complete trap. Because the people who don't want to fund us are not going to be convinced by, our supposed innocence and all like that. And then also it's just inaccurate. There is nobody, people with type 2 who, through no fault of their own, are going to get type 2. Indigenous people in Canada have enormous type 2 rates, and that's because they were colonized. I mean, their diet was completely changed. And now they live in poverty. And same thing in Australia, same thing in New Zealand. A lot of places, India as well has a big indigenous population. And then there are just the people who are just unlucky. I mean, a lot of this same thing with complications as well. So anyway, that was a little bit me stalling for time for a question. Lucia, do you have the question in front of you, and then can you ask it?
Let me see.
Oh, maybe not.
I don't know what it is. Sorry.
Well, while that's up, can I just jump in on and just to, I guess, comment, James, on everything you said. I completely agree with, but I think that that's a really important point that you have made around that sort of moralizing, if you like, of the different types of diabetes. It dehumanizes people. It really does when we sort of, try to put a moral worth over some types of diabetes above others. Um, and I've given a lot of talks about, how it is that we need to talk about diabetes and when we're defining the different types of diabetes, how to do that in a way that doesn't throw one type under the bus but is still, remains factual and provides all the relevant information. There are ways to do it. So I would encourage everybody to have a look at the work that has been done, but also to get involved with, the pledge, encourage teammates to sign the pledge. It doesn't only have to be within the diabetes community. We've got to get it out there beyond that as well. Call it out when we see it in the media, call it out when we see lousy stuff on social media. Diabetes isn't a punchline. Why diabetes seems to be okay to make jokes about, I still don't understand. But to call it out if we're confident to do that, I think is something that we can do ourselves every day.
Okay. And I did see the question. If anyone's ever been a moderator on Zoom, when you're the moderator, you get
It's a
all these
nightmare.
like you get just constant like your computer screen is up. So Gabriel, I'm gonna summarize your question. First of all, he says great work on the work you're doing. And in the humanitarian sector, it's a big issue. There's cultural religious beliefs leading to denial of service. So specific to the summit coming up, do these scholarships for people living with diabetes from African countries also apply?
Yes, in fact, the scholarships as they are now will only be for people living in low and middle income countries. So that actually that may change, but at the moment that is how the funding is working. But we are hoping that it will be expanded from there as well. But I mean, for people looking for opportunities to attend, please speak with your local diabetes organisations. We're doing a really big push to organisations saying, please send a couple of people, don't just send one person, send a couple of people. But also, if you've got a community advisory group in your organisation, bring people with lived experience as well, because, for a number of reasons, they're the people who can talk about that lived experience, what this means on a day-to-day basis, how it impacts their life with diabetes, how it impacts their diabetes care. But also it means that then they can go back home and work with that community that they're a part of to really, to really support efforts that are being made. And I think Bastian may have just shared something. There are a number of people I know on this call actually who are part of the working group, I think, for the summit. And I think Bastian may have shared something about scholarships for that. But we're really looking forward to there being a strong, a good number of people with lived experience from across the globe there.
Okay, great.